Sometimes love doesn't begin with fireworks. It begins with silence, the kind that speaks louder than words. Rafay was the kind of man who lived quietly, somewhere between shadows and sunlight. He believed some feelings were too delicate to be spoken out loud, and Michelle was one of them. They met on an ordinary morning at the university courtyard. She was chasing the wind with laughter in her hair. He was standing beneath a tree, lost in a book. When her scarf brushed against his arm, he looked up, and for a single heartbeat, everything around him froze. From that moment, Rafay knew that his life had changed, but he also knew he would never have the courage to tell her. Every day he found new reasons to stay close to her. Study sessions, group projects, late-night library breaks. Yet every time he wanted to speak, his heart refused. He told himself, "One day I'll tell her. When the time feels right." He saw her every day, spoke to her every day. Yet every word he truly wanted to say stayed locked inside his heart. Rafay and Michelle became inseparable, like two pages of the same book, always together, but never read aloud. They studied together, laughed together, and shared small, beautiful moments that meant everything to him, and perhaps nothing to her. She would talk endlessly about her dreams, her love for sunsets, old songs, and how she wanted to travel the world. Rafay would listen quietly, memorizing every word, every smile, every sigh. He never told her how her laughter was the sound that kept him alive, or how her name had already become his favorite prayer. Sometimes late at night, he would write letters he'd never send. "Dear Michelle, today you smiled, and I forgot how to breathe." Then he'd fold the paper, hide it in a drawer, and whisper to himself, "Not today, someday." But days turned into months, and someday never came. He loved her silently, the kind of love that blooms in shadows, unseen, unspoken, and unreturned. Every silent lover fears the same thing, not rejection, but replacement. One afternoon, Michelle walked into the university cafe with someone new, a confident, smiling guy named Haris. He was everything Rafay wasn't. Loud, funny, fearless with his words. And Michelle. She was glowing in a way Rafay had never seen before. Rafay smiled when she introduced them, pretending everything was fine. But deep inside, something in him shattered quietly, invisibly. He noticed how she laughed a little louder now, how her messages came a little slower, and how her stories began to include another name. That night, Rafay walked alone under the same streetlights they once shared. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "So this is how love sounds when it starts to fade, silent but heavy." Still, he didn't step away, kept showing up, even when it hurt, because loving her even from a distance felt better than losing her completely. And maybe, just maybe, he believed that destiny would give him one more chance. But destiny, Johnny, it rarely waits for the quiet ones. Some hearts don't break in noise, they dissolve quietly in the rain, drop by drop. It was raining the day Rafay realized he was losing her for good. He stood by the old cafe window, watching Michelle and Haris laugh under a shared umbrella. Their smiles glowed against the storm, while his reflection in the glass looked pale, almost invisible. For the first time, Rafay didn't follow her with his eyes. He just closed them. He wanted to remember her this way, smiling, alive, untouched by his silence. The rain kept falling, soaking his clothes, washing away everything he never said. He walked through the empty streets, his footsteps echoing like unanswered questions. That night, he opened his journal and wrote, "I never asked her to stay. Because love isn't about holding on. It's about letting someone go, even when your soul begs you not to. He placed the journal on the windowsill, beside the rain, and whispered softly, "Maybe love was never meant to be loud." Outside, thunder roared. Inside, his heart went quiet. He didn't lose her in a fight, lost her in the silence between two unspoken words. Rafay found out about Michelle's engagement the same way people find out about distant storms. Suddenly, quietly, and too late. A picture appeared on his phone. Michelle dressed in pastel colors, smiling beside Hari's, an engagement ring shimmering on her hand. For a moment he couldn't breathe. It wasn't jealousy, it was grief. The kind that comes when a dream you never dared to voice finally dies. That night he walked to her street. The house was alive with laughter, fairy lights twinkling, music echoing through the rain. He stood across the road, half hidden beneath a tree, watching her from afar, his eyes tracing every smile, memorizing her happiness like scripture. He whispered to himself, "You look beautiful tonight. Maybe this was always meant to be your story, not mine." And as he turned to leave, he said softly, "May every prayer I ever made for you still reach you, even if it doesn't come from my lips anymore." The rain returned, gentle this time, as if the sky itself was trying to comfort the man who loved too quietly. There comes a moment when silence turns into regret, when every unspoken word starts screaming inside you. A few days before her wedding, fate crossed their paths once more. Michelle walked into the old cafe where they had spent countless evenings, the same wooden chairs, same scent of coffee, but everything felt different now. When Rafay saw her, time slowed. She looked radiant, yet distant, as if life had already taken her somewhere he could no longer reach. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them felt heavier than ever before. Finally, Michelle whispered, "You were always there, Rafay. Always listening, always caring. But you never said a word. Why?" He smiled, a broken kind of smile, and replied, "Because I was afraid my words might ruin the peace of your world. I thought loving you quietly was enough." Her eyes filled with tears. "And now?" she asked softly. Rafay looked down, then said, "Now I realize. Silence can break hearts louder than words ever could." They both sat there knowing this was the last chapter of their story. No goodbye, no promises. Just two souls sitting across a table, watching love fade into silence. Time doesn't heal every wound, it just teaches the heart how to live with the scar. Years went by, the world changed around him, but Rafay remained where love had left him, quietly existing between yesterday and never. He moved to a small coastal town, opened a bookstore near the sea. The sound of the waves became his new silence. The smell of old pages became his peace. He never spoke of Michelle again, yet she lived in every story he read, every poem he underlined, every song he refused to play. Sometimes when it rained, he would stand by the window, close his eyes, and whisper her name into the storm, not to call her back, but to let her go once more. Inside his bookstore, on the highest shelf, sat her favorite novel. Between its pages lay a dried rose, the same one she had once kept in her notebook years ago. He never replaced it, he never moved it. It was his quiet way of saying, "I still remember you, even if the world doesn't." And on lonely nights, when the world outside slept, he'd smile faintly and whisper, "Maybe silence was always meant to be my language. Its meaning." Some stories never end. They just wait for the right rain to begin again. It had been 8 years. Rafai's bookstore had become his world, quiet, peaceful, filled with the echoes of stories that weren't his. That evening, clouds gathered once more, heavy with rain. He was closing up the shop when the bell above the door rang softly. He turned and froze. There she was. Michelle, her hair a little shorter, her smile a little sadder, but her eyes, the same eyes he had loved once and maybe always would. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain began to pour, drumming softly against the glass. "It's been a long time," she said, her voice trembling. "8 years," he replied, half smiling. "But the rain still remembers us." She looked around at the books, the quiet, the warmth, and then at him. "You kept living," she whispered. "I kept remembering," he said. Michelle stepped closer, holding a book from the shelf, her favorite one. Inside, she found the dried rose still pressed between its pages. Tears welled in her eyes. "You never forgot?" she asked. Rafai shook his head softly. "Some silences," he said, "are too beautiful to break." Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the world clean again. Inside, two souls stood facing each other, not as lovers, not as strangers, but as memories that finally found peace. As she turned to leave, Rafai whispered under his breath, "I loved you in silence." And maybe that was enough. And just like that, she was gone, into the rain that had once taken her away, now brought her back, only to say goodbye again. The bell above the door chimed softly. Rafai smiled through his tears, because even endings sometimes can be beautiful.